Welcome into the Backyard Brothers podcast. This is our first episode, and so we are figuring things out and still getting things moving. And appreciate any listening as we move forward and figure out what this podcast really is. First of all, I want to introduce the name of this podcast, and then each of the three participants here. So I'm Scott Hansen. I'm the oldest of these three brothers, and I'm a communications professional. I work in communications and marketing, and I have background in sports journalism as well. And so I'm looking for different mediums that we can uh, get some communications moving on and get analysis and really interesting takes on some news across all sports, which I think we have a good group of people here who are interested in a wide variety of sports and news topics and can provide a good view of that. Backyard Brothers. I thought about this name because us three have played in the backyard so many times, and we've come up with different games to play in the backyard, whether it's football, basketball. I remember Dustin and I played soccer when we were in Utah at one point in the backyard, and so I thought that was a really good idea, and the name is not taken, so why not? So let's get Dustin and Cody to briefly introduce themselves as well.
Yeah, I think the name is great. It fits how we grew up, and I think this is a great way for us all now in our in years where we have kids now, young kids, to just reconnect and talk about sports, and it's just a fun experience. I'm excited to be a part of it. I'm excited to bring a lot of my takes, however controversial or unintelligent they may be at times. I'm excited for all of this. Cody.
Yeah, it's Cody Hansen, and I'm the youngest of the brothers. Um, and I don't have any real formal background in sports, but I have a real deep interest and desire. I always have had, in specifically football and sports. And so I've always had that interest, and that backyard brothers thing. I think it really is a great idea and connects us how we used to be connected, and how we have that interest in sports. So I think it'll be really fun.
Yeah, and Dustin said something that sparked another thought. Uh, there may be controversial takes. There may be what the other two of us and any thousands of people out there may find unintelligent or or whatever it may be. That's the idea, though. We are not affiliated with any group. We're not affiliated. We're not biased. And anytime that we try to bring bias in, Cody, if you ever say that Utah deserves a spot in the college football playoff, we're shutting you out. So, so
Yep.
things like that. So this is we're try to be as unbiased and objective as we can. I'm going to say some rough things about my quarterback from BYU today. So it's going to happen. But we'll try that as much as we can. So the way we've set it up so far is we've identified some topics that we want to talk about. And the format I want to take here is that each of us picks one of those questions and we'll start there. We don't have to go in order, whichever one, like I'll start and I'll pick one of these topics and we'll start right there. And then Dustin can pick one of these topics on the chat and we'll move on until we get through them, or until we run out of time or interest in today's recording. So any ideas from the panel of ways to improve that?
Let's jump into it. And
Yeah.
you said this is our first episode, and we're gonna get a whole lot better as we get along. We're gonna get better at this, and we're excited just to thanks for listening with us this first episode, and we'll join us for episode 2 as we get
Yep.
better and better.
Yep. We'll figure it out as we go along.
So I'm going to jump right into, I'm going to pick the first one here because it's news today. If Dustin and Cody know about this, the story of Zach Wilson and the New York Jets has taken a new angle today. It was announced that Zach Wilson will be benched starting in this next game. They have turned it over to Mike White as the starter for this week. As they let's see, who do they play this week? The
The Bears.
The Bears, thank you, as they host the Bears at home, and Wilson won't even be active at all. Joe Flacco is the backup. Wilson's going to be over there in street clothes. So let's talk about this for a second. What is wrong with Zach Wilson? A little bit of background. First of all, why was he the number 2 pick 2 years ago? The reason that we saw leading up to that was he had a fantastic one season at BYU. But it was always betting on the potential of saying that one season could translate to several great seasons in the NFL, even while upping the talent level and the opposition level to the NFL. He was also making those off-platform throws on the move, the Patrick Mahomes style stuff against his body with an arm that can flick it 70 yards through the air. He had all of those physical measurables, but the risk was always the mental aspect of it. How would he do reading an NFL defense? How about staying in the pocket, making the right throws? And how would he react under pressure? All of those have been the very bottom level of the NFL. He has the second worst quarterback rating in the NFL at 72.6, ahead of only rookie Kenny Pickett. So let's start there before I jump in a little bit more. What is wrong with Zach Wilson? Was it a wrong evaluation? What's going on?
So thinking about the evaluation, I remember when looking at the NFL Combine, the scouts videos, and they're saying, "Wow, this is so impressive! Look how great it is!" And there's this particular view where he's running left and throws it across his body right, 50 yards perfectly. And I said, "That's impressive. There's no defense. There's no rush. The receiver is not being covered. He has who knows how many times he practiced that. There's absolutely no real game experience dedicated to the throw that NFL scouts looked at and that maybe the Jets base some of their decision making on." And so now I see him when I watch the games, when I watch the highlights, and he gets the ball, he looks, and you see him progressing through his reads and cannot make a decision. He is just can't make a decision. And so many times there's open players that he hesitates and won't get it to. And so the skill, absolutely, but hesitation has been his downfall. And if he's going to make a return to the NFL, it's got to be make a decision, execute the pass, and live with the consequences. And that's what all the great quarterbacks have ever done. It's just that they execute those passes really well.
Yeah, and you said it yourself, Scott, about he had one good season at BYU in college against mediocre teams. And yeah, he's showing he has this talent, he has this potential. You're seeing, as Dustin was saying, these amazing just flicks, perfect on a dime, right in the breadbasket. And so he has the potential, he has the talent. But college is a lot different than the NFL, and he's learning that the hard way. He's realizing that he's not reading defenses as well as he could have in college. Defenses are much better, and he's not as good as people thought they would be. And to be honest, I kind of predicted that from the start. I did not think he deserved to be a second overall pick. He has a talent, he has the potential, but I didn't think he would have the execution to do it. And secondly, accountability, the ability to be a leader. That is taking a big hit on himself right now. If you can't be a leader, you don't deserve to be a starter in the NFL, period.
I'm glad you said that, Cody, because that leads right into what I was just about to say. So the Jets defense is elite, right? I mean, they held the Patriots to 3 points. They lost because of a special teams mistake. That defense was fantastic and has been all season. After the game, reporters come into the locker room and they go to the quarterback. They ask Zach Wilson point blank. Here was the question, quotation: "Do you feel you let your defense down with this offensive performance?" Wilson says one word: "No." How can you possibly say no to that question? Even if you didn't really, by only scoring 3 points on offense, never moving the ball, the Jets had 2 yards, and it's total in the second half. 2 yards. And squandering an amazing defensive performance, you have to answer yes to that question. You have to have that accountability, that leadership that Cody just talked about. Now the defense is pissed off at him. You've lost your locker room. And that's probably part of the reason Mike White is starting. So will Zach Wilson get another chance? He really has to dig in. Like Dustin said, learn to be a quarterback, because right now he's the bust of all busts.
Yeah, when you are the leader of an offense, let alone your team, when you're the leader of the offense, you have to take accountability because if your offense isn't producing, you look the leader, the one who's leading the offense. And if they're not producing, it's obviously got to start with you. And so if you're going to make any changes to the offense, Zach Wilson, you got to step up. You got to start owning your mistakes and owning it to your teammates. Be a man, grow up, and you gotta start, you know, at least acting like you care. I mean, get out there. If you're not playing well, own up to it and get better, practice. And then when you are playing well, then people will see it. You have that potential. You have that talent. So we just need to see it put in play. I think that if I think if he does that, yeah, he'll get a second chance. I'm not sure if it'll be the Jets, maybe. I mean, it might be in the future, but he'll get a second chance. But he has to prove that he can be a leader in the NFL first.
Kind of a thought on that, and this leads into another topic that we've talked about is there's so many top tier college quarterbacks that are complete busts, from top schools, players that since they're 15 years old, everybody knew they're going to be an NFL quarterback. And you can look at people like Baker Mayfield, who's just washing out of the NFL. Um, that it's just becoming complete busts. And so one of the questions wanted is how is the NFL evaluating college quarterbacks? And is there something about that needs to change in order for a team to better scout a good quarterback?
Yeah. I'll jump in. And Zach Wilson was evaluated based on current trends, like off-platform throws, Patrick Mahomes style throws. One great year in college on a middle of the pack team, like BYU. But the argument at that point was sound, right? Isn't it better to look at guys in that style of team, where you're middle of the pack, you don't have great players around you, rather than maybe a Trevor Lawrence who quarterbacked a team full of 5-star recruits where everyone blocking for him and catching the ball was going to be a high draft pick as well. It's hard to accurately gauge the talent of someone like Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields or guys now in college like Bryce Young or CJ Stroud when they play on teams that are so much better than anyone they face and surrounded by similar 5-star prospects and future NFL stars. So this is why we have to look beyond the stats, right? Sometimes it's not all about the measurements or the arm strength. You have to have those, sure, but it's about mental aspects, leadership qualities, the ability to lead people. I'm thinking Jamarcus Russell. Now, he was
there's the bust. There's the bust of all busts.
He was an athletic freak, right? He was 6'7", 6'6", 270 pounds, something like that. He could throw it the length of the field, 100 yards. Just amazing physical attributes, but he had no leadership qualities. He had no motivation, no work ethic, and he still, because of his physical attributes, was the #1 pick in 2007, and he failed catastrophically. How do we look at quarterbacks the right way to judge if they're good? Trevor Lawrence was supposed to be the next Peyton Manning. Remember, we were talking about him as the next Andrew Luck, the best quarterback prospect in years, and so far he's failed. While it was Justin Herbert is the one that Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, who have been good. How do we evaluate the other stuff?
I like the thought of these teams are looking for the next Peyton Manning, the next Tom Brady. I think is, obviously the GOAT, Tom Brady. They're looking for the next Tom Brady. And they're like, okay, great, draft him first overall. Tom Brady was drafted in the 6th round, 199th pick. That's it. Potential is not how you measure a quarterback. It's really what is their work ethic? What is their willingness to dive into a playbook to understand when they get to the line exactly what the defense is going to do and how to direct the receivers there right at the line, right before you say hike, to be in that holes that are going to exist because of the ability to read the defense and to make plays off of that.
Yeah,
And that's unfortunately something very hard to teach.
Yeah, I think that, we're talking about players like Trevor Lawrence and Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, and you said it, Scott, on these teams that everyone, the supporting cast, is going to be, top, first or second round pick. And that clouds the ability to really judge that player. And so I think that when maybe the best way to evaluate those players is, they have these pro days and these combines. Get them different players from different teams to throw to. Get them a different scheme to get, see how they react to that scheme rather than what they've been practicing or playing, and just kind of see how they react and how they can adjust to that. I think that a lot of times, and we're just talking about it, that players in the middle of a pack team who are really shining, or just they see, oh, they have potential, we'll draft them, number 227. Those players seem to be the ones that really stick out and sometimes have the best career in the NFL. And I think that's because they aren't surrounded by an all-star cast. And I think it's because they're able to be seen better that way and have a better understanding of what their ability is to adjust.
Yeah. Cody, I know it's your turn to pick, but this flows so perfectly into another one. If I may talk about Taylor Heinicke.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, the question here was, what really makes Taylor Heinicke a better quarterback than Carson Wentz? And here's some background. Carson Wentz is the number 2 overall pick, like Wilson, by the way, back in 2016. Maybe being the number 2 pick is a bad thing. I don't know. But Carson Wentz is 6'5", 240 pounds. He can throw the ball 1.5 miles. He's as smart as a whip. He was a valedictorian of his high school. In 2017, he was an MVP frontrunner for the Eagles. He threw 33 touchdowns against just 7 interceptions. So what happened? The talent is there. Taylor Heinicke, on the other hand, was an undrafted player out of a small school, Old Dominion, bounced around 3 teams before being drafted by the XFL in 2010. Or sorry, 2020, apologize. Then he dropped out of football altogether, and he was taking community college classes to change his career when the then Washington football team called and signed him to the practice squad in December of that year. 3 weeks later, he's called up to start a playoff game against the Buccaneers and Tom Brady after Alex Smith was ruled out with an injury. In that game, he throws for over 300 yards and a touchdown, and he ran for a touchdown, kept it competitive all the way to the end, even in a loss to the eventual champion Buccaneers. And now he's won 4 of 5 games after Wentz was injured, and it's his job to keep now. Heinicke is small. He's 6'1". He's barely over 200 pounds. He has a noodle of an arm.
Tiny, just tiny.
Yeah, none of us are that big. Sorry. But I mean, relative to Carson Wentz, right? He's a little kid. But he has a noodle of an arm where he can probably hit 50 or 60 yards with the wind at his back. Physically, he doesn't hold a candle to Carson Wentz. So why is he better empirically? What is it about him? Let me stop there and see if you have some answers.
Honestly, my first thought is humility. He understands what it is to not have the shot that Carson Wentz really was given. Carson Wentz came into the league with a chip on his shoulder, and I'm the second round pick, and a lot of expectations sitting on his shoulder. Taylor Heinicke really just he had to earn it. He really, really had to earn it, and he's proven it day in and day out. And so that's one thing. Is I think that having humility, he's not playing for himself. He's not trying to get these stats for himself. He's trying to win. And I don't see that from Carson Wentz. I honestly think that he's sometimes trying to prove that he was that second overall pick. He's trying to show, look how far I can throw it. Look how many yards I can get in a game. Stop worrying about that, Carson. You gotta just focus on your team, get him the ball, short passes if you need to, and you gotta focus on winning the game. That's what Taylor does, and Carson doesn't.
Yeah, kind of playing off of that with Heinicke, the nothing left to lose, right? That playoff game. Hey, if he sees what he might be able to squeeze a pass through a hole, and hey, if he throws a pick and fumbles and all this, he's back in community college. It's like nothing changed, right? He's got nothing left to lose, so he's going to try his best to do everything he can, and just get to do the best because it's the nothing left to lose. Where these these top picks, the people where you are starter from day one, it's kind of, you have that. I'll refer to it as the slide mentality of these quarterbacks who are always taught to slide. Is that, oh, I got to make sure I protect my body, got to slide, got to, because I gotta keep playing. I'm the whole team rests on me, and it's kind of a different perspective, and I'm not sure Heinicke has that perspective. I maybe it's not a fair comparison, but I think about Josh Allen, the way whenever he runs, he's running people over. Like, the man doesn't slide. He
He's
doesn't
also the
care.
size of a defensive end, but
Yeah, sure. Yeah, he's bigger than everyone trying to tackle him, but he plays with a very similar reckless abandon that we've seen from Heinicke and from some of those others that we respect, and that's why the Bills, the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes does a lot of the same thing. They're fun to watch because you know that Josh Allen is playing with that reckless abandon of, I'm gonna win, and I don't care if I'm bruised tomorrow, I'm gonna get there.
yeah, I love what you both said. And I think being the quarterback of a football team is a lot more about the physical stats, like we talked about. It's about leading a team. It's about example. And it's even about that, in that high schoolish fashion, it's about being popular. And before you scoff, I mean, no one in Washington likes Carson Wentz. No one in Indianapolis liked him. Frank Reich couldn't get rid of him fast enough. He fell out of favor in Philadelphia. He's not a good teammate. He couldn't lead anyone. Everyone loves Taylor Heinicke. He's a regular guy. He's the blue collar type worker who wins with grit. He puts his body on the line. He works hard. He leads by example. And he's well liked by everyone. And all of those things make one thing happen that Carson Wentz can't do. He makes all of his teammates better. Terry McLaurin, who is easily the best player on the Commanders team, is a better player when Taylor Heinicke is throwing him the ball than when Carson Wentz is doing it. The teammates want to play with Taylor. They will put in an extra effort for him. His offensive lineman will take a bullet for him. That's something about playing quarterback that no one really sees, and it's fascinating.
And that's that leadership that Zach Wilson is lacking. You know, that's exactly what we're talking about.
All right. Cody, you want to pick one?
Yeah. I the ones that I'm dying to talk about a little bit is TCU and USC. And I know it's a little bit rough of a transition there, but with one more game remaining in the college season, the regular season, then we have the bowl games and playoffs coming up. I want to talk about TCU and USC. TCU was a team that, I mean, I don't think anyone was expecting I mean, heck, even a 7-3 record or anything. I think that would have been a success. But we're talking about they're 11-0 right now, and they've beaten teams like Baylor, Oklahoma State, and then there's USC, who's has Lincoln Riley, and they've been showing that they have a firework of an offense, a defense that is doing crazy good in the turnover margin. And so are those really good teams? Are they going to be able to compete in the playoff? Is TCU going to be a team like Georgia? Is USC going to even be able to get in? Will they do anything if they get in?
So with TCU, the good thing about football is that every game is single elimination when it comes to playoff. And so you don't have to be a better team than Georgia. You just got to play better than them for 60 minutes. You just got to have a really good day. Is it possible for TCU to beat Georgia? Absolutely. Sure. Once. I think that if it was a 7-game series, they'd lose 4-1.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Georgia's really, really good. TCU is also really good, and I think they can beat them once.
Yeah. I mean, TCU has passed every test, right? They dominated Oklahoma. They got past Texas, Oklahoma State, Baylor, and they have Iowa State this weekend. They can beat them. And then they have the Big 12 title game, which will most likely be a rematch against Kansas State. But is their style good enough to beat a physical team like Georgia? Like Dustin said, maybe 1 out of 7 games, right? I think they have the offense to score a lot of points, but that Georgia team is really good, and they're really physical, and they can wear a team down. And that TCU offense, or that TCU style of offense is so different that they could score a lot of points and they could run it up and down against Georgia, but I just fail to see how they compete physically with that team. And like Dustin said, one game, yeah, they can do it. It's just I don't see it happening in a big thing like that. If we're talking about USC as well here, they're 10-1, right? Their only loss coming to Utah on the road. They currently sit at 6th outside the playoff because there are 4 undefeated teams ahead of them. Ohio State and Michigan play this weekend, so we'll have one less undefeated team. But what will it take for USC to leapfrog either of them? And LSU, by the way, who sits at number 5. I would like USC above LSU just because of the 1 loss versus 2, but there are a lot of other factors to consider. Again, so the big thing that I think of is USC a better team than either Michigan or Ohio State, no matter who loses that game. They're both undefeated, and in my mind, whoever loses that game, unless it's by 40 points, would still be above USC in my opinion. So if TCU and Georgia remain undefeated, I'm pretty much of the opinion that top 4 stays as is, unless someone wins the big game by 40. Also, you have to consider if LSU beats Georgia in the SEC title game, they probably belong in the playoff more than USC too. So
it comes down to competition, I think. For LSU, they play in the SEC, and whether you agree with it or not, SEC is just a higher elevated talent of football than any other conference. And although it's unfair, and I really don't like the college football setup, if you win and do really well in the SEC, you deserve a spot in the playoff more so than any other team in any other conference.
Yeah, I would just echo everything you guys said about that. I was, it's so exciting to see, something fresh, something new, but at the same time, you've got to know what's going to make money, and that's what the playoff is about. And so, if it's going to evaluate or going to generate more money to have a Georgia versus LSU game in the playoffs, and that's probably what's going to happen, because that'll be more fun. It's going to be more talented. That's going to be more production scene rather than a Georgia versus a TCU or a USC team that ends up Georgia blowing them out by 40 points.
I don't know. So I mean, definitely money is a big factor, but I think for the most part, the college football playoff has done the right thing by having the right teams play in it to this point. It's a 2-loss Alabama team a couple of years ago making it to the playoff sounded weird, but then they won the whole thing. Was that it? I can't remember if that was it or if that was the year they lost to Georgia, but whatever. But Michigan and Ohio State, this game is like national championship quality, because they're 2 of the only 4 remaining undefeated teams. And so I'll go back to what I said. Should it really matter who loses the game unless they get destroyed by like 40? Losing to either Michigan or Ohio State is not a death sentence. There's the idea that's been debated to death that maybe it's not whether you're undefeated, it's about putting the 4 best teams in the country in the playoff. Can anyone accurately argue that Michigan and Ohio State are not 2 of those 4 best teams?
Nope, I can't. They are so far they are looking like one of the best teams. The issue though is, who have they really played as a strength of schedule? You look at Georgia, you look at LSU, you look at some of these other teams. They have a resume. They have a reason to be as good as they are. I think Ohio State, if I remember their schedule right, maybe the best team that they've played so far might have been Penn State, maybe. And I don't even know if they were ranked when they played them. I don't remember.
Penn State's been ranked all season. Yeah.
Are they? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's that, and then the rest of the Big Ten teams, which of course Big Ten, yeah, it is a great conference, but it's not the SEC. And so, yeah, they're historically always a good team. Michigan's a great team. They are probably some of the best teams, but you can't help but wonder, who they really played.
Yeah. I mean, there's also the idea that the loser of that game will not even play in the Big Ten title game. So that's also something that has to be considered. And we've talked about if LSU stuns Georgia in the SEC title game, then they probably take that loser spot. And if USC wins out and wins the Pac-12 title game, you have to consider them. What if TCU loses the Big 12 title game to Kansas State? Then maybe that loser is back in. It's really complicated, and it argues further for an expanded playoff that we're going to get at some point. All of those teams should get a chance. Michigan, Ohio State, Georgia, TCU, USC, LSU, or even throw in Clemson, Alabama, Oregon. So, yeah.
Yeah, the best way to answer this question is to have an expanded playoff, and I'm excited for college football to eventually evolve to that point, which it needs to do.
For sure.
Yeah.
So with few minutes that we have left, if we could bounce back to the NFL, talk about the NFC East, the Cowboys, the Giants, the Eagles, and really what three of the best teams in the NFL right now. Thinking about the Cowboys, when Dak Prescott went out with a broken finger, it's like, all right, there goes another Cowboys season, just like expected. And then Cooper Rush just owns the league for 4 or 5 weeks, and Dak Prescott comes back and keeps going. Same thing. Look at the Giants. Look at Saquon Barkley, who, in my opinion, if we can finally get a non-quarterback to win the MVP, Saquon Barkley should be at the top of that list. And then look at the Eagles, which has been one of the great surprises to watch this season.
And the Commanders are above 500 too. I mean, all 4 teams are above 500 right now. It's such an interesting question because the NFC East has been historically unreliable. The NFC East has not had back-to-back champions since the Eagles did it 4 years in a row from 2001 to 2004. Every year since has been a different champion. That's insane. But at least 3 of these teams are likely to make the playoffs. But it's worth noting that the NFC East has had the easiest schedule this year. They have played, there are 2 divisions they've played, the AFC South, which is a complete mess, with everyone other than the Titans having a colossal failure of a year, and the NFC North, which has a good Vikings team and 3 bad teams. So it's been a lot easier path for the NFC East than any other division in the league as well. But
yeah, and I think it really shines on the need for coaching changes and the players, the injuries, Dak Prescott, Saquon Barkley, they've been dealing with injuries last year or 2. And then with Brian Daboll coming in for the Giants, and then Nick Sirianni staying with the Eagles, Mike McCarthy, is this his 3rd season with the Cowboys now, or 3rd season there? And then with the Eagles, they got a new quarterback coach as well. I think it's to note that's where the change happened. It's in the leadership of the team and the coaching. Of course, having your player like Saquon Barkley, that's going to make a change. And so you got to try to have your good players healthy and make some changes that you need, and that's where it happens. And I think that's what we're seeing in the NFC East, and they've had the potential all along. They just needed to get the right coaches in.
And we talked really briefly about the Cowboys and Cooper Rush. There was a lot of saying, why push Dak back before he's ready if you're winning without him? But there is a big difference. And I went back and I looked at the offense with Cooper Rush and with Dak Prescott. With Rush as the starter, the Cowboys averaged 21 points per game. With Prescott as the starter, coming back against the Lions in October sometime. I'm throwing out that first game against the Buccaneers, but since coming back against the Lions, the Cowboys offense is averaging 35 a game. That's 2 touchdowns difference on offense with Prescott rather than Rush. So, I mean, it is quite a big difference. But the biggest thing with the Cowboys is that defense. That defense is amazing. Micah Parsons should be Defensive Player of the Year the way that he's going. That is really, really good defense. And I know we're going to hit time, but please share your thoughts.
So with the Cowboys, and here's maybe one of the controversial thoughts I have to finish it off. The rushing attack has been really good, especially when Ezekiel Elliott is not on the field. When Tony Pollard could be a starter for any other team and would be one of the best running backs in the league for any other team. And he just so happens to share it with a big name and an extremely overpaid and overrated player in Ezekiel Elliott. And so I love to see Tony Pollard and just how amazing he does and the way he runs.
Yeah, I've always agreed with that with Tony Pollard. He's always been an amazing player in my mind, and I think he deserves that starting spot over Ezekiel.
Okay, I think that'll do it. We'll take it up next week. There's a lot more that we have. We didn't get everything, but